Why your tour branding shouldn't stop once the guests are on the tour. So much thought goes into branding. The colors, the tone, the brand mission, the images, the story behind it, all of which tends to disappear once guests arrive on the actual tour and it's just them and the guide, who maybe doesn't have that connection to the brand. Truly special and unique experiences are ones that get valuable word of mouth marketing. But that doesn't mean you have to have really random or niche tours. It's simply about bringing your unique lens and mission to whatever experience you offer, be it whitewater rafting or a beer tour. A bonus effect of making your brand more defined on your tour is that experiences with strong branding makes it much easier to keep consistency across different guides, across different cities, or even countries if you expand. So here's how to brand your tour experience in 3 steps. 1, communicate your brand to your team. It's easy to forget that at the end of the day, it's just your guests and your guide out there on the tour, which makes it imperative that they fully understand not only your brand, but how it should be integrated into the tour. So the first step is to set internal facing why, purpose, and values, right? If you already have these set, but in customer facing form, you're going to need to rewrite them so that they make sense for guides. For example, a customer facing why for your company might be, we help travelers stay active on their trip by combining must-see sites with best local jogging routes, right? With a slight edit, the internal facing version might be, we get health-obsessed travelers out of the boring hotel gyms and into our city by turning a jog into a sightseeing experience. It's a very subtle difference, and we're just talking words, but the first one probably won't resonate with guides because they're not a traveler. They're not the customer in this sense. The language used in the second one saying we, our city, includes the guide in that. Brand values are also super vital in communicating this with your team. So these are things like, we value as a brand honesty, or always being curious, or searching for the unique. These should be not only evident on the tour, but in every aspect of the employee experience, from hiring to onboarding to team meetings. These should be company-wide values. Your customer in this specific exercise should be your guides. It's like internal marketing, right? And if you don't incorporate values into their experience, how can you expect them to incorporate it into the guest's experience? Number 2, integrate brand points onto your tour. This is one of my favorite tools to create. I call it a branded tour checklist. This should include points that your guide should hit, broken up into each section of the tour. So before the tour, during the tour intro, during the tour ending. For example, let's pretend you run a food tour and one of your values is promoting local eating, right? You really value that. During the tour section, you might put for the guide, at each food stop, make sure to point out the local ingredients and explain what about this dish you won't find in the next town region. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Or maybe one of your company values, and again, this is more of an internal facing one, but is always ask questions, right? You value that as a company. So in the tour intro section, you might put, remind guests you want them to ask any and all questions and let them know the best time to do so. Beware the temptation to fill this list with only housekeeping objects. This is not what that is. For example, asking guests for allergies, mentioning the brand, collecting guest emails at the end of the tour. These things can be put in for that consistency. So when you're presenting it to your guide, it's like, this is how we give a tour at this company. But if it is only housekeeping stuff, and if it's a really long list, the less likely the guide is going to incorporate it. You're not trying to give them more work. You're trying to make their job easier. Number 3, turn guides into brand ambassadors. This is less as a step and more of an aspiration. It's like the end result if you communicate the brand to your guides properly. This is what can happen. Whenever I work with tour operators and their teams on internal branding, I always say that the ultimate goal is for that guide to be at a party and someone asks them what they do. Instead of saying, oh, I'm a tour guide, they would say, oh, I work for X company and they're so amazing because. That's what you want, right? Ways you can do that beyond strong values that excite your guide teams, make your guides feel like part of the company. There should be value in working with you over another company, even if they do a very similar tour. You can do that through regular newsletters, team meetings, just generally keeping them in the loop of the larger company, being transparent and making an effort to educate them on general travel industry acumen. You'd be surprised how many guides don't actually have that base knowledge, and that leads to a lot of miscommunication between guides and tour operators. When you have guides proudly wearing your branded gear and telling your customers about other tours they can take with your company, you know you've done it right. And you can read the full article on tripkinetics.com.